Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Connected On-Demand Workplace. I am Ari K. Kepnes, and I'm Director of Market Research at Density. And I'm joined by Brian. Brian, you want to say hello to everyone?
Hey there.
And Brian is the head of product here and a co-founder at Density. And we really appreciate you taking the time today. You are carving out time in the middle of a workday or the beginning of it to spend time with us, and we really appreciate it. Just on that note, as a token of our appreciation, we will be giving away $20 Amazon gift cards to people who meet the requirements that were sent out before. So let's get started here. And just a note, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A folder. It says Q, or it could be at the top of your screen. It says Q on a folder. If you submit your questions as we're talking, either anonymously or not, then we will answer them at the end. Again, we want to make this valuable to you. So please feel free to share whatever questions you have. There are no stupid questions. This is a complex world of workplace, and we want to help. So please feel free to put those questions at the bottom. Today, we're going to talk a little about who we are here at Density. We're going to talk about this trend, this move towards connected on-demand platforms and what they mean for the workplace at large, and then talk through what this means in terms of all the systems and software that people use in their workplace and for workplace teams to make this seamless and possible. So at the end, we'll take your questions, as I mentioned. I work for a company called Density. Density is an analytics platform for the connected workplace. And the way it works at a high level is we have a device that gets mounted above every defined space, every room, above a doorway or a building or a floor. And we can understand how is a building being used, how many people are using that space in real time. Again, real time is kind of this new wave of the workplace to understand how many people are there now. You can do so much with that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the way that we kind of differentiate is because we have a device that actually is using these computer vision sensors and machine learning to understand and detect humans versus non-human objects entering and exiting a space. So we have this platform that allows us to understand how people and place are interacting in real time. And that's why we're here. We're venture-backed. We share some of the same investors as some of the largest companies here in the Valley. And we also serve some of the largest Fortune 500 companies across industries, including telecom, finance, and a number of other industries. So we're growing. We're excited to share kind of what the world of workplace can look like with data. On that note, there's this context of how the world is changing. Just this past week, WeWork announced that they're going to be filing for an IPO, and they're kind of definitely an example, emblematic of how are things changing in the world of workplace. But they're also part of this larger shift of giving us what we want when we want it. It's kind of this whole way of thinking about convenience, the way of being in the world in a way that allows you to get what you want in a frictionless, seamless way using your phone. And the reason why I put all these on the same slide here is to really get us to start thinking about what is similar in all of the ways that the world is being disrupted today with these platforms. And at a high level, what all of these things allow you to do, whether it's WeWork, Lyft, even Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, they allow you to get access to things in real time or faster time in a way that's convenient. They connect supply and demand, whether it's cars or hotels or anything like that, in a way that's a little bit more easy and doesn't have to rely on traditional modes of ownership. Doesn't have to rely on long-term leases, but it's kind of saying, I want something right now and I get it. And that's really where the whole world is moving when we think about the role of mobile in our lives. So on that note, we're kind of moving into this idea that flexible space is the term that all of the largest players in our industry are using to describe how workplace and corporate real estate is changing. So they're saying things like 30% of all office space will be flexible by 2030. That's JLL. And what they mean by that is that we're going to have all these different ways of renting out office space. So there's things like WeWork, there's other co-working spaces, there's one specified for certain needs, there's breathers, and all of those things are about, hey, you don't have to be locked into a 20-year lease all the time. You can also have more of a flexible more on demand, more kind of a seamless experience, just kind of find the thing when you need, but don't have to take in all the overhead of actual ownership. And that's very much a shift that we're seeing today. CBRE is saying the same thing, right? So they're saying that to achieve an agile workplace, it's all about being flexible. It's about kind of putting the employee experience in the center and then giving all these different modes of ways that they can kind of get what they need done in a flexible way. So there's kind of this sense now, and we're definitely seeing it. I went 3 years ago to one of these events where it was all these co-working spaces and these big players, and it was clear since then, just in the past 3 years, how seriously this industry, from CBRE, JLL, all the biggest players, think that things are changing. And that's really interesting to us. And I am talking pretty abstractly, but it's happening. And I think everyone in it is noticing some sort of change. So to kind of think about at its core aspects, how is the world of workplace changing? How is the standards of convenience rising? And the way that we think about it is it's around these three pillars: having more choice, better service, and less time. So I can get access to what I need when I need it. I can have this better service, so almost a hospitality approach, in less time. I don't have to wait. So, I was talking to, one of the heads of workplace at a major tech company in Mountain View. And I was touring their campus, and I was trying to understand, what is all this about? Why do you have all of these different options for your employees to go? Why do you allow them to kind of feel like they're being waited on, almost like this hospitality approach where there's catering, there's wellness centers, there's all of this. And how are you doing it so that really they remove all the friction? And that person told me a story that basically the idea is that they want to understand what would be the most successful day at work. And how could you remove all the frictions, whether it's waiting for a conference room or not having a good lunch, and finding your other employees when you need them, and collaborating the right way. And really there's this emphasis on, hey, we can create that now. We can create the optimal experience, and we can do it with technology. So why not? Because it is providing the ROI that we need, because people are the center of all work today, and they need to be happy to stay. So that's kind of the context here. I know I'm talking pretty high level here, but what this means is that where we're moving is that it's not only that there's going to be things like WeWork, or there's going to be things like co-working spaces or all these new technologies. It's that it's all coming together. And an API is something that allows different systems to talk to each other. So we're seeing things that never talked to each other before, so to speak, whether it's the analytics of how corporate real estate is being used, to the calendaring system, right? Meeting spaces, physical spaces are now being connected through all of these digital platforms. And we believe that is kind of a testament to this change. It's a way of understanding this movement towards a connected, real-time, convenience-centered world of workplace. And so we're going to break that down here, Brian and I here, about what this actually means in terms of the daily lives of an employee. So it's not enough to just say, okay, all these different systems are talking together, but what are they doing to make people have a better experience at work? And we're going to do that in a few ways, and we're going to show how density enables that type of experience. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here, Brian?
Yeah, sure. So let's put this in context of the employee. As Ari mentioned, one of the biggest frustrations employees have is not having access to the space they need when they need it. Gartner put out a survey recently, and they found that the average employee spends an hour every week just looking for an open room. We conducted our own survey, and we found a very similar finding. And I can attest to this problem. I work out of our New York City office. Before we installed density at the office, I was going up and down between 5 different floors, just trying to find an open room. I was wasting a lot of time. We've spoken to a number of customers at Fortune 500 companies, and they have the exact same problem. So this is Slack. We're going to jump into a demo showcasing how this happens and how we're attempting to solve it. And again, Slack is a tool we use for inter-office communication. So Ari, why don't you launch Slack?
Sure.
Cool.
So I'm going to say, let's meet, Brian. I really want to talk to you about some of these new product features.
Cool. So I'm going to respond to Ari and say, use our density room booking solution to say, hey, density room booking, show me free conference rooms nearby.
And if anyone hasn't used Slack before, it's really a big tool that's taking over how people are using all internal communications instead of email. So it is kind of a big change that we're seeing. So go ahead, Brian. So we now see that there's some options. Here's your nearby conference room. So I'm going to go and I want to have the dual pod. That's one of our favorite booths here for 30 minutes.
Cool. And it's just that simple. You can quickly book a room for 30 minutes. And now Ari and I, instead of hunting around for a different room, can quickly head to that room and have that conversation. And so this integration with Slack and our calendaring software makes it super easy to focus on what we need to get done, not wasting time looking for an open room. And go ahead, Ari.
Yeah, Brian, I think I just wanted to kind of take away the magic for a second, because that did feel a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. What's really cool about that too, and what Brian and his team have done is that in those matter of moments when I was looking for an open room, it's actually going and looking for how many rooms are available right now. And it uses our people count and our ability to understand how many people are using different rooms to find some of the open rooms or rooms that have been not used recently. So that was some of the kind of the Wizard of Oz behind that. I just wanted to touch upon that. And Brian, yeah, I'll just have you continue here on some of the other kind of features. So if you want to just tell us about how this all fits together.
Sure. So one of the big bonuses to adding a calendaring system to density is getting the room booking analytics and being able to pull in booking data and compare it with occupancy. I apologize if you guys can hear my dog in the background working from home today. So one of the few different analytics you can get are the number of meetings attended versus unattended, who books the room but never shows up, who is your top room booker, what meetings are most attended, and what meetings are least attended. So by virtue of just connecting density to Robin, Team, Google Calendar, or Outlook, you can get a sense of all these different analytics.
Great. And Brian, I think one thing too that you mentioned that's pretty fascinating too is that it's not just about having the right number of conference rooms, right? That's a big issue today. And conference rooms are one of the biggest shared assets that gets fought over, right? We all know this. So it's also about kind of understanding from a policy perspective, like, do we allow people who are just going to use it for one person meeting to use let's say a 10-person room? And then we can use some of these data insights to drive our decisions around that. So we know, for example, that even though this room was meant for many people, it's really being used just by 31% of the time, it's being used just by 2 people. And that's the way that we're seeing all of this shifting, right? It's not just enough to know the space planning, but in real time, and then the analytics to start to say, okay, here how we're actually using our assets. Here's how the policies can inform that and how it all comes together. And we're going to just show you here an example of some of the things that Brian's been working on. So Brian, you want to tell us what we're looking at here?
Sure. Yeah. So if we fast forward to lunchtime during the average employee day, they can launch the Density mobile app. This is something that we launched. Here you see a list of all the different spaces and their real-time count. So if we jump into the cafeteria, what you'll see is there's the real-time count. There's 121 people there right now. We know it's getting a little bit quieter. There's been only 100 entrances in the last 15 minutes. And then if you scrobble over the different hourly breakdown, you can get a sense as to the current count at different times of the day, as well as a predicted count as to how many people there will be there later on in the day. And then we've included this really simple option to just notify me when it's quiet. And what's nice about this is you don't have to guess about when it's going to be least busy in the cafeteria. You can just turn that notification on, and then you get a push notification to your phone when the threshold of the occupancy goes below, some percentage. So it makes it really hands-off and really easy to not waste time.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And I was really impressed by when you guys built this, that it wasn't enough to just use the data from these different devices that are measuring how many people are entering and exiting a space, but it really is kind of this real-time experience of saying, hey, I want an open space, or I want to go to the cafeteria. Is now a good time? And it changes your whole kind of day-to-day decision making in the workplace, which I think is really a testament to how we're seeing those principles of kind of things like Uber, things like WeWork, and things like every other system on our mobile device coming into the workplace. So I think just to summarize here, that we have higher expectations for our experience in the workplace. And some of the ways that we can think about that is having more choice, meaning you can have on-demand booking, you can find the specific spaces that you need when you need them in less time, and have better service. And I think better service is something that we didn't touch on a lot, but there's really this idea that the people who are creating these workplaces today have a service mentality. They're able to say, what do people need in real time, and how do we support that? And I think that's a testament to where this is all headed. So we're kind of getting to how this all ties together. And at Density, what we found was, in order to collect the data of how people are using space in real time to find out how they're interacting with their built environment, you need to understand how many people are in each space. And that's hard because people do things like hide behind hinges, they walk in different directions, they carry objects. So this very premise of, I want to know how many people are in a space in order to do all these fun things and integrate with all these systems is kind of a difficult challenge. And so the approach that we take here at Density is we have these devices that we've built that get installed above a threshold. You can see they're above a doorway here. And they're actually they're scanning in real time in 3D all the time for the signature of a human, the entrance and exit. They're able to discern what a human is looking like. So the actual sensor, the actual device, is totally anonymous. So it's able to accurately know how many people are entering and exit without knowing who you are. And that allows us to be able to be integrated across large portfolios of real estate. And so, it is true that once you add on all the different systems, you can start to get data from those as well. But our approach has been that we need to create a system that's private by design, that allows for accurate real-time count across a workplace, and that's what we do. And the way that this gets installed is we have this device that gets installed above an entryway, as I said, and it gets plugged in to either a PoE and in standard connectivity, or you can plug it into a regular outlet and then use Wi-Fi. And we've also had people who have been able to do 4G LTE with it as well. So we are able to connect to the systems that you're using, and then be able to understand in real time how many people are in that conference room versus another conference room, or that floor versus another of the building. And that really powers this whole system. So if you want to learn more, please reach out. We're going to take some of your questions. And I'm just going to leave this up in case any of you want to write this down as we're kind of answering our questions. So the first question here is, does the Slack integration for booking conference room require the deployment of the sensors, or is it a standalone app? Okay, so so the way that we think about this is we have these devices that we build, that we've engineered, that you install in every relevant room or area, and they count how many people enter and exit. And then we are able to have our own analytics and our own applications, like what Brian showed you, and we're able to integrate into the systems that you're already using. So we integrate into things like Slack. We believe that people are using all these different systems, so we integrate into them. So that's kind of how it works, whether it's Slack or Team, Robin, all of these different meeting room systems that people are using, or IWMS systems. We can layer in a level of people count data from our own devices. How much data is required to build forecasts for when it's quiet? So that's a good question. That's around this idea of predictive data. We didn't talk too much about that today, but obviously once you know how people have used all of the spaces over time, you can start to say, okay, how might they be using it? And we've had, one of our largest clients actually found out that less people were coming into their cafeteria during the Friday lunch. And so they changed how much food they order and how much they staff. Okay, how does Density know where you are when you are requesting to find rooms nearby in Slack? Are you using the sensors to geolocate you? So yeah, so our approach is actually around this idea that you can have access to all the things that you need to have a real-time experience without being kind of geolocated or your individual devices being tracked. So it's really looking at how many people are in that space, and then it looks for rooms that are available on that floor in that area using the systems that already integrate. So our approach isn't to kind of have to geolocate everyone. It's to use these defined spaces to get real-time data in that way. Let's see. When you set up the Slack app for the first time, let's see. We're going to have a question about Slack. What have you found that people like most about using Slack in the workplace when you set up Slack? Okay, so it sounds like someone here is not really familiar with Slack, and that's totally okay. I think that there are all these different systems, and the point isn't to just jump on the bandwagon of one in order to get this data. It's to find out what you're already using and then integrate in a seamless way. So if you're not using that, you can still get all the value from that. And all right, here, let's see. So how often have we seen Density be used in terms of open area? So the way that our devices work is we can understand on a floor level or in a defined space how many people are in there real time. So what we've done with that is we can say, let's say you have a whole floor with or a whole section that's kind of free address. We can detect the total occupancy in real time of a floor, but we are not a company that is understanding how are you using an individual desk. There's a lot of issues with privacy there. There's a lot of companies that are kind of moving towards an optical sensor direction. And ours is not a camera. It's really just trying to understand how are people either on a room level or a building level or a floor level being able to do that. So the people that have large floor plates, we can understand the floor level in real time, but we're not trying to understand every desk. Okay, let's see. Are there any more questions? Doesn't look like there are. So if you want to share any of your thoughts with us or any questions, please feel free to continue the conversation. We know that this is kind of a new thing, which is that the workplace is changing fast and there are a lot of different technologies. And I think as we're going, the one takeaway I would have is instead of kind of being overwhelmed by all of this kind of change, whether it's from ways that co-working models or flexible working models are changing or all of this technology, it really comes down to how to make people have a successful day at work and then creating the systems around that. So if you already have systems that you feel like aren't working or people are complaining about or data that you need, that's really where to start. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And I would love to continue the conversation and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.